agents had cracked the Japanese secret codes and knew that Pearl Harbor would be attacked months in advance. However, FDR intentionally never gave this information to the naval base commander because he wanted a cause to enter the war. Previous to the attack, the people of America were overwhelmingly opposed to getting involved in either the European or Asian conflicts. After the so-called surprise assault, Congress reacted and declared war in the next few days, while the vast majority of citizens who understandably believe this story patriotically came together to fight. For those people who believe in fairness and goodness, even considering that rogue elements in our government could carry out such wicked actions, this is difficult to comprehend. It is essential that good and honest people consider the accusations and, more importantly, the evidence. This evidence documents how federal agents have initiated violent and increasingly deadly action against innocent American citizens, i.e., Ruby Ridge, Waco, the World Trade Center bombing of 1993, Oklahoma City, TWA Flight 800, and now 9/11. If this evidence is correct, that unconstitutional and lethal force is being used against our own citizens, together with the accusation that the predominant media is intentionally presenting untruthful information, then, well, you be the judge. This booklet is not for everyone, but it is for those who love their country and have that rare quality called an open mind. Today in America, about 1% of the population can connect the dots. They realize that a handful of self-professed elite have virtual control of our banking system, of our movies, of the news outlets, and of both political parties. Until and unless we increase the relative numbers of citizens who understand this reality to at least 5% of the population, a critical mass, our culture will continue its march toward a one-world fascist government. This is definitely not fun to write or think about. However, it is a present truth, and as the Bible has said,
"Let those who have ears listen."
This booklet is presenting evidence that goes against everything that the mainstream media and political structure would have people believe. For many people, including myself, this is a very difficult pill to swallow. However, only by facing our fears will we be able to understand the truth and to live in real freedom and love. As Jesus said,
"The truth shall set you free."
Hopefully, when people become aware of the massive and draconian fraud that has been perpetrated on our nation, enough people will awaken from their dreamlike slumbers to take appropriate action to restore the ideals of our republic. Perhaps these thoughts and ideas can be part of that process. The setup.
I tell you, freedom and human rights in America are doomed. The U.S. government will lead the American people and the West in general into an unbearable hell and a choking life.
Osama bin Laden, BBC taped video interview after September the 11th. The American people have been played like a fine violin in the hands of a master in relation to the information we have been given by the predominant media. As soon as the 9/11 events began unfolding, the so-called experts immediately showed up on TV, and lo and behold, a very high percentage of these talking heads just happened to belong to the Council on Foreign Relations. The CFR is the primary political organization of the elite in the United States, and is described by former Senator and presidential candidate Barry Goldwater as
an offshoot of a British secret society whose purpose is to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and create a one-world government.
The following 14 points are objective pieces of factual information and relevant questions concerning events which took place before 9/11 that have been glossed over, misrepresented, or ignored by the government and media. Point number 1. In 1979, the CIA initiated a massive program of covert military aid to indigenous Islamic tribes in Afghanistan and Islamic volunteers from other nations who were in opposition to the Russian military invasion of that country. The Russians had formed a coalition with several Afghani tribes from the north of that country, which are referred to as the Northern Alliance. The tribes supported by the CIA were called the Mujahideen by the Western press. Ronald Reagan in 1986 euphemistically referred to the Mujahideen as the freedom fighters of Central Asia. Elements within the Mujahideen later branched off to become Al-Qaeda, again with full CIA support and funding. Point 2. The leader of Al-Qaeda is a Saudi Arabian who had been educated in Europe, whose name is Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden's father was Sheikh Mohammed bin Laden, who founded and built Bin Laden Brothers Construction Company. Later, this company was renamed the Saudi Bin Laden Group. It should also be noted that from the early 1980s, Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset whose Western cover name was Tim Osman. Point 3. The bin Laden family is one of the wealthiest in Saudi Arabia and has been instrumental in building dozens of American military bases in the Middle East. The bin Laden family is closely connected with the ruling sheiks of Saudi Arabia and has strong political and personal connections around the world. Point 4. The bin Laden family and the Bush families have been friends and business partners for many years. In 1977, George Bush Jr. started Arbusto Energy Company in Midland, Texas. One of his first and major investors was Salim bin Laden, who at that time had become the president of the Saudi bin Laden Group. Salim happened to be the older brother of Osama bin Laden. Another interesting connection is Sheikh Khalid bin Mahfouz. Mahfouz is one of the richest men in the world and was also a major investor in Arbusto Energy Company. Further, he was operational director of the corrupt BCCI between 1986 and 1990. According to CIA Director James Woolsey in testimony to the U.S. Senate in 1998, Mahfouz was a major contributor to Osama and Al-Qaeda. Oh, one more little detail. Mahfouz's sister is Osama bin Laden's wife. It's like one big happy family. Point 5. Al-Qaeda was involved in the bombing of the United States embassies, which killed 35 Americans and 150 locals in 1992. Al-Qaeda was also partially responsible for the suicide bombing of the USS Cole, which killed 25 American sailors in 1996. Point 6. Both Yemen and Sudan offered to extradite Osama bin Laden after the bombings of the embassies and the USS Cole. However, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who was appointed by Bill Clinton, refused to take bin Laden. Point 7. John O'Neill was a deputy director of the FBI and resigned his post in disgust because of interference from both the Clinton and Bush administrations in the investigation of Al-Qaeda. He allegedly said this:
"The main obstacles to investigate Islamic terrorism were U.S. oil corporate interest."
Mr. O'Neill had the misfortune to be hired as the director of security at the World Trade Center starting on 9/11/01. He was killed on that day in the World Trade Center bombing. Point 8. European newspapers have widely reported that Osama bin Laden was sick with a kidney malfunction and went to an American hospital in Dubai in January of 2001. While there, he met with the CIA's section chief. These accusations are extremely serious because this is after the bombings of both the American embassies and the USS Cole that were tied to bin Laden. Point 9. Intelligent people from around the world laugh at the mere idea that bin Laden could orchestrate the complex hijackings of 4 commercial airliners that took off from 3 different airports from a cave in the mountains of Afghanistan, 12,000 miles away. Point 10. In October of 1993, there was a car bombing of the World Trade Center. The bombing was not successful in bringing the